Tell me I'm lying. If youth pastoring the way it's run today worked, we wouldn't have 3 out of 4 Christian teenagers leaving the church by the time that they leave home. According to Barna, 70 to 75% of Christian teenagers are no longer going to be going to church once they hit college. Why is that? Maybe it's because the way youth pastoring is done is not only ineffective, it's dangerous. Hey everyone, I'm Rachel, and today on Craig Your Bible, I'm doing a special episode because last night Saddleback Church, Rick Warren, the Purpose-Driven Life, was in the news because one of their youth ministry volunteers was arrested for sexual conduct with 2 14-year-old boys. Now, this is Ruben Meulenberg. He has a brother named Ephraim Meulenberg. They write books about like how to explode your youth ministry, and it's like, okay, so is grooming kids to have sex with them part of your plan to explode your kids' ministry? Like, pedophiles, stop. Why is it that youth pastors and youth ministry today is not only ineffective and ridiculous, but it's full of pedophiles? And I will say this. I think there's a huge reason for it, and you might not like the answer. And one of the big reasons is people want to dress down for church. Now, before you're like, that's not the reason people are pedophiles. No, here's the deal. You have these youth pastors, and I've been to churches, I've applied for youth pastoring jobs, and it usually goes to the guy who wants to look like a kid, like, oh, he's just another one of the bros, he's gonna go do hoop with the boys. Like, no, you're a youth pastor. Like, you need to carry yourself a different way. You're not there to be the kid's friend, you're there to be a teacher and a mentor. And what I see at youth ministries is like these guys, and you'll see it in this guy's mugshot, like, they dress like teenage boys. And you don't need to be emulating a teenager to be an effective leader for a teenager. Parents don't do well when they are their kid's best friend. Those are usually the bad parents, the ones that are like, oh, hey kids, do you need anything? Like condoms, drugs, booze? Like, no, your kid's gonna either end up dead, in jail, or pregnant with parents like that. And you see that with the youth ministry, when you have these like cool, hip youth pastors, what happens? Kids leave the church because it's stupid, it's ineffective, like, it's just babysitting. And one of the problems is you have these guys come in, they emulate teenagers. Hey kids, like, oh, look at me on Snapchat, why don't you add me? Like, look at my Snap story. Like, what? They dress like kids, they talk like kids, and it's not appropriate. So you have these guys that are dressed up like kids, they hang up with kids, and nobody is keeping an eye on them to make sure that they're not grooming kids, which is what has happened at Saddleback Church. If you saw a guy dressed in a suit, or a woman that's dressed up nice, professionally, and she's hanging out with your kid, or she is Snapchatting your kid, you'd be like, who is this person? If you saw an adult man who wants to hang out with your kid at a skate park outside of church hours, you'd be like, who is this guy? Like, kids, don't talk to him. Let's all keep an eye out on him. So it makes people put their guard down because, I'm sorry, a lot of parents are super aloof, and they just see like, young person, and sorry, when you're dressed like you're going to a skate park, a lot of parents aren't going to recognize that you're a 32-year-old adult. I'm 29 years old. I have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old sibling. So it's like, you can obviously see that we're different in age. And this guy is older than me, and he's grooming 14-year-olds, which is around the age of my siblings. And it's just like, how did nobody catch this? And it's just, people get too comfortable, and there has been this blurring of line where it's like, you're not the adult anymore, you're just one of the kids, you're just hanging out, bruh. It's just stupid. Like, parents need to demand that their youth ministers act like adults, that they dress like adults, because if you see an adult who is dressed like an adult hanging out with your kid, or you see them on social media, you're going to be like, what's wrong? What is going on? Who is this person? But when they're dressed like a teenager and they act like a teenager and they talk like a teenager, you might not realize that the person that your kid is talking to is an adult who is dangerous. And there needs to be that separation. One of the big problems that I see in youth ministry today is that they feel like youth ministers need to be a big kid so that kids will like them or relate to them, and that's not what's needed. You need to be a mentor, you need to be a teacher, you need to provide guidance. You're there to teach kids, you're not there to be their friend. And if you go on my website, in the photos section, I have a picture of me during my high school graduation. Now, I don't have a picture of me at my college graduation because who cares, but at my high school graduation, I have a picture of me and my favorite teacher. And he was my economics teacher for 3 years in high school, and he made a huge impact on my life because not only was he a great teacher, but he was super serious. Like, he was on point. Like, he expected a lot of out of us, and nobody could get away with anything with him. But everybody loved him because he provided guidance and rules and structure, and that's what teenagers need. And he talked to us like we were adults. It was a two-way street with respect. He wore suits to school. We had to do the Pledge of Allegiance in class. He always called us by Mr. or Miss and then our last name. So I didn't even know some of my classmates' names because I only knew them as like Miss whatever. So I was Miss Stevens. And because there was structure and there was respect and there were clear boundaries, people learned. Everybody loved this teacher, even though he was super strict. He wasn't like the loser teachers that are like dressed in a hoodie and they're like, hey kids, what are you doing this weekend? It's like, don't want to talk to you. You have kids and a wife. Bye. So, I don't think it is necessary for these youth pastors to act like one of the kids. And honestly, I would prefer that they don't, because I want to be able to pick out who is appropriate and who's not. If I can't figure out who is the teacher and who's just like a larger high schooler kid, because you can't tell these days with makeup with the girls and then the boys, some of them look like they're 4, some of them look like they're 44. You just can't tell. And I think that there needs to be a certain protocol. And I think that when it comes to church, you can dress up for a job interview, you can dress up for a date, you can dress up for a night out at the club. If you have a $600 iPhone, you can dress up for Jesus. So it doesn't have to be expensive, but you can go down to TJ Maxx, TK Maxx, whatever, get a $5 clearance button-down shirt, wear it, and it's like you're showing respect, and you're also more likely to be pinpointed by parents who are going to recognize that is an authority figure, and they're going to keep their eye out on you when they see that you're hanging out with their kid outside of normal church hours. So, one of the big things that I almost forgot to talk about is that if churches were talking about sin, we wouldn't be having these problems. If they were talking about homosexuality is wrong, or sex outside of a marriage is wrong, and it's not just like, hey kids, let's talk about Taylor Swift at youth pastor, and I swear this has actually happened before. I've sat through it. You wouldn't have these issues. You wouldn't have pedophiles in the church because kids would recognize, hey, this is wrong. When you say everything is right, love everything, discern nothing, don't judge anything, this is how you get pedophiles grooming kids, because kids don't recognize the signs, and they don't want to be judgmental, they don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, they don't want to be unloving. So they get taken advantage of. And if you aren't going to teach your kids about sin, and you're not going to talk to them about proper behavior, you are setting them up to be abused. Shame on you. You have the responsibility to take care of your kids by teaching them right and wrong. And if your church isn't teaching your kids right and wrong, if they're not talking about tough issues like morality, if they're not talking about tough issues like why we can trust the Bible, don't have your kids in that youth group, because all you're going to get is kids that leave the church or kids that are abused. So anyway, something that I wanted to think about. Tell me below in the comments, what do you think is the problem with youth pastors today, and why is it that there are so many pedophiles? So it's a bad thing, you guys, but I will see you on Monday. Bye.